Okay, we got a 2008 Toyota Highlander here, 245,000 miles. Got a leak on the boot of the CV axle here. You can see all the grease that's splattered everywhere. So it may just need a boot, but I'm going to go ahead and change the whole axle. I got one for $100 from O'Reilly Auto Parts. So also going to try to change the control arm. The bushings are worn at the same time, which is a pretty big job because you got to get this transmission out here, and you have to jack the transmission up from the bottom of the bell housing. First, we're going to remove the spline nut right here. That's a 30mm 12-point socket. And then next we're going to remove these bolts for the strut mount. There's 2 bolts here. And take off the ABS sensor. We also got to remove the tie rod here. So we're going to pop this pin out, and I'm going to use a clamp to remove it. Alright, so we got the tie rod remover on here. Have to remove the nut and cotter pin, and basically you just put it on, and with a socket wrench loosen it until it pops. Alright, so we got it out here. It's hard to hold the camera and do this, but yeah, it just pops right out. Alright, so put your nut back on to help get the CV axle out, and just whack it with the rubber mallet. It'll help get the CV axle out from this side here. Alright, I'm actually going to take this caliper off. There's 2 bolts down here. Right there. And I'm going to hang it from here. Okay, so the CV axle popped right out. Thanks to using the mallet first on the nut. Tied the caliper up here, out of the way. Since we're doing the control arm, we now got to pop the ball joint off. And you will need one of these, or you can rent it to pop this thing off. Alright, ball joint just popped off. Now we can remove this thing. Alright, so the ball joint's off. I actually need to replace my tie rod because this is cracked. I think it just broke when I used the ball joint remover. So I'm going to try to remove the axle now by prying behind here. There's a seal, so you got to be careful, and pulling. Alright, so the CV axle's out. Gonna get a little bit of transmission fluid draining in there. Be careful not to mess up this seal. These are replaceable seals if you buy it from the Toyota dealer. I pried on this plastic part, but eventually this metal ring is where I was able to get the pry bar, and that's what got it, by pushing with the pry bar right here. Alright, so I'm comparing these two to the one I bought. This is from O'Reilly Auto Parts, and it appears to not be the right one. My shaft is longer here, this is shorter. This seal seems a smaller diameter than this seal here. I just can't imagine this working with this shaft about 3/4 of an inch shorter, and then this is different. And it looks like it might be slightly shorter. I know they can extend. Okay, to get that transmission mount out, I have to take off a bolt right here. It's a front motor mount. Get a long extension, go down and take the little nut off. That's it. Also pull this bolt out here for your upper transmission mount so the engine can move more easily. Alright guys, got the control arm out here. What I did is put jack stand with the block of wood under the bell housing. The car was jacked almost all the way up with the regular car jack here. Then I lowered this jack, keeping this as a safety low. But I lowered this jack, and that pushes the transmission up, so you can pull this out of the hole. I've already pulled it out, and I've installed the control arm. But I'm going to tighten these bolts back here. Alright, had to put the old one back in because the one I bought from O'Reilly Auto Parts is too short. I don't want to take a chance. It's about an inch short to the shaft. So I stuck the old one back in, but we get the control arm back in. I also changed the tie rod. That's pretty simple. You just unscrew this and screw it back on. You're probably gonna have to get an alignment after you change your tie rod. So this you just push back in. I'm going to put everything back together. I'll do part 2 when I actually have the correct CV axle. Okay guys, I got the new drive shaft here. So I'm basically doing this all over again. One thing I'll tell you, doing it the second time, I didn't have to take the tie rod out or the ball joint. I loosened these bolts for the lower ball joint, but I don't even think you have to do that. I took the caliper out. I left the caliper mount on there. So it's just these 2 bolts, and then your 2 bolts here for your caliper. And you knock the spline nut, and then it pulls to the side. And now I'm going to pull this out to put the new one in here. Alright, so I got this thing out again. Again, the key is get a crowbar, come underneath here, and then press with your foot. You get a good amount of torque, and you press with your foot to pull it back while pulling with your hand on the other side. This time I messed up the outside bearing there, but the cover, but it doesn't matter. This is the old one. I didn't mess it up when I took it out the first time, but the thing you don't want to mess up is your seal. If you hit that seal, then you got to replace it. Okay. All right. Here's the new shaft I got. This is from Rock Auto. Cardone. I think it's the cheapest one they got, but it says it's their most ordered part. If you try to find reviews, the best one, like, there's a negative review on every manufacturer online for these aftermarket. It's hard to find one with positive reviews. You could get an OEM Toyota. It's about $375. That would be your best bet. This is $45 with $15 shipping, so $60. This is the correct one. The shaft is the same. The seals are the same here. It does seem shorter, but you can, I think when it's extended it's the same. I don't know. This one doesn't seem to push back too much, my old one. Maybe because it's old. But we're going to stick it in. Alright, one more thing. I saw this tip on another YouTube channel that recommends sticking this in the grease, and that holds this split ring on, so it doesn't move around. I don't know if it's necessary on this model, but I'm going to put a little grease on here to hold this in place while I stick it inside here. Alright, we got this in. Here's a tip. This new one was harder to get in than the old one. Once you get the spline threads lined up, take this and you can actually push it in and hammer it in, because it was tough to get in there. And then like 2 taps, like bam bam, push this in and it'll seal up. And alright guys, one note on the control arm here. There's a bolt here, a bolt here, a bolt here, and a bolt underneath here. I don't know if I talked about that earlier, to get it out. But if your car, when you're driving, this part, if it's separated and worn, this bushing, it when you hit the brakes, it feels like your caliper is loose. You can actually feel the engine and transmission move when you touch on the pedal. And I didn't know what it was for the past 4 years, but it was this bushing here, and it was allowing the whole engine and transmission to move like ½ an inch. Super annoying, like especially going over bumps. So that fixes it. It's hard to replace, but there you go. Alright, so got everything back on here. Just put these 2 bolts back in. Your anti-lock brake bolt. You tighten your nut here. You also got to dent this right here with a screwdriver and a hammer or a pin punch. I tighten back the lower ball joint. You do not need to take these off or remove your ball joint to remove the CV axle. You do not need to remove your tie rod. It swings enough where you can get it out. That's pretty much it. I'm going to replace my brakes since I got it off. I can show you how to do that, but you probably know how to do it if you're doing a CV axle job already. Okay, for the brakes, remove these 2 bolts, hang up your caliper here. You're going to pop out your brake pads. They got a little spring clip here. Alright, these aren't too bad. They actually got brake light left, but since I'm here, I'm going to replace them. Put your new ones in the slot. They give you new clips, but I just stick them in the old one. Alright, that's on. Let's see if we got new clips. Yeah, they got new arms, so we'll use them. Just pop them in these holes. Get this one in here. Alright, now you gotta squeeze this caliper here. You can usually use a C-clamp. I think I have a vise that might work. I'm gonna go grab it. Okay, I happen to have a bench vise laying around, so just put it on, you tighten it. You want to get this piston flat. C-clamp is easier, or they sell a brake spreader for like 10 bucks. But you just tighten it, you want to get these pistons flat. So we got these flush. Let's put the caliper back on. All you gotta do is tighten these 2 bolts. And that's it. That's how you change your brakes. Piece of cake. When you start the car, step on the pedal a few times, it'll tighten the piston. Some people bleed the brakes here when they retract the piston. I've never done that in the 25 years of working on cars. I haven't had an issue, but do it that way. You wouldn't be watching this video if you know how to do that already. And that's it.